Well, that time has come now where we focus in on issues affecting women. And this, of course, gender series is talking to women empowerment and where women fit into the sectors of society here in the country. And we're talking about all spheres. But let me hand this over to Sakina and her guests to take it forward. Good morning once again, Sakina.
Well, good morning, Leanne, and thanks so much to everybody tuning in. And it is Women's Day, and as you know, as you would have become accustomed to at this stage, we will hone in on women's issues. But I think very important that we do not make it about this day or this month, because women's issues are with us for as long as we are here and alive. And of course, you know, joined by a very esteemed panel this morning. And we will touch on a very, on rather a few very topical issues and try to foreground a few others which we believe to be important. And of course, just looking at some of the statistics around issues affecting women, and the Stats SA 2017 to 22 Women Empowerment report that showed that despite females being the overwhelming majority in the working age population, their participation rate in the labor workforce remained lower than 50.7%. And this, of course, in comparison to men who were at 63.2% of the workforce. And also, as you can imagine, this slows down further progress for women in various spheres of their lives. But as I said, we are going to touch on quite a few topics this morning. But let me start by introducing our esteemed panel. And starting to the extreme right, we have Nolene Cochin, who is the CEO and founder of Pink Drive. Tessa Dooms next to her, Director of Programs at Rivonia Circle. And to my immediate right, I have Nomfundo Mkoi, who is founder and Group Chief Executive Officer of Ikeboletu Group. And then to my left, Boipelo Lekubo, who is Financial Director at Harmony Gold Mining Company. Lerato Semenya is the Managing Director at Chromatic Consulting. And to my extreme left is Pinky Mashiane, who is the President of the United Domestic Workers of South Africa. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I want to just start perhaps by giving each of you about 30 seconds just to tell South Africa and whoever's watching across the world exactly who you are and what you do. Let me start with you, Pinky.
I'm a founder and the president of United Domestic Workers of South Africa. UDOSA is a domestic workers union. UDOSA is educating domestic workers about their rights and also create a good working relationship between employers and domestic workers.
Lerato?
My name is Lerato Semenya, founder and managing director of Chromatic Consulting. I think for me, I started this business just over 4 years ago after having spent quite a long career in the world of IT and HR analytics and all of that. And I found myself sitting on Mancos, Excos, on boards where I would be the lone voice. I would be either the lone black person or the lone woman or the lone queer person. And I just got tired of being able to carry all of those conversations in those sittings. So I thought, let me, branch out and start to have conversations with Excos around how they can, put their money where their mouths are in terms of advancing the cause for women.
Boipelo.
Thank you. I'm Boipelo Lekubo, Financial Director for Harmony Gold Mining Company Limited. Harmony is South Africa's largest gold mining company by volume. I've been in the mining industry for plus 14 years. I think this is my 15th year. On top of that, I also sit on the board of African Rainbow Capital. So yeah, that's in a nutshell me.
Nomfundo?
Sorry. My name is Nomfundo Mkoi. I am the founder and the group CEO of the Ikeboletu Group. We started the company 13 years ago in KZN. It is a funeral insurance company. From 13 years ago, we've done so well as a group that we are one of the leading brands in the funeral industry space. Yes, that's basically that's me.
Tessa?
Yeah, so I'm Tessa Dooms. I'm the Director of Programs at the Rivonia Circle. We are a political think tank. We encourage people in the communities that we work in and across the country to become more politically active and reclaim their political agency. We believe that politics is more than what the politicians do. It is something that we need to do every day for 365 days in our communities. So that's all what I do.
Noli?
I'm the founder and CEO and director of Pink Drive. We're a NGO that provides free gender-based cancer screening to all the medically uninsured across the country. We focus mainly into the rural areas, and I think it should be known that the services we provide cannot be found, you know, in many parts of this country. And whilst we have a signed MOU with National Department of Health to deliver these services, we don't get funded by government at all. So we have to find the money to take these mobile units into all the hospitals, clinics, etc., where there are no breast units.
And that is such noble work, and you know, absolutely fantastic listening to each of you and what you do on a daily basis. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. Tessa Dooms from the think tank, as it were. What should we be focusing on Women's Day 2023?
Yeah, for me, the big focus should be on how do we enable women, and I'm actually going to say people who are not men, which is a controversial way of saying it. But I think that that's important. It's important that we think about gender in a broader way, but that women have a voice in this country, that we have a voice that matters, that is valued, that is seen, that is heard, and not just you know, because we constitute a large part of the demographic, but because we have something of value to offer the country. I think women, the idea of women's empowerment has always been seen as something of a, you know, we're doing something nice for women by recognizing them and empowering them. And that's not actually what I think what this should be about. It should be about recognizing the value women already add to our society, to our country, and giving space to that. And I think as we talk about the different things, especially in terms of the work that women contribute to the country, you'll see that women are contributing across all spheres of the society. They're contributing in big ways, in small ways, in financial ways, in political ways. And it's our job as a society to value and enable that.
So when I look at what you do then, Nomfundo, in a male-dominated space, and we always talk about these things, but are things changing, would you say, in the space where you operate?
Firstly, Sakina, I don't want us to celebrate women because it's Women's Month. I think it's not enough. Just to celebrate us, it's just in others. We are doing well in different spaces. In our space in the funeral industry, yes, there is transformation, but it's very, very slow. When I entered the space, there were hardly women that started the company from scratch. Women had just inherited their businesses and from their husbands or from the previous generation. And honestly, even in positions, even within the committees, there were no women. In fact, myself, I was the first female to be chairperson of the undertakers in my province, which is not fair. And I didn't get to that because I'm a woman. I got to that because I was doing well in the space that we're in the funeral space. I really don't like us as women being celebrated being promoted because we're women, it's more like we're victims. As a woman, I feel that I'm doing well in my space and I deserve to be there, but there must be acceleration of change. We need more women in leadership in our industry, which is not possible at the moment.
Which is very interesting, and I want to quickly switch to Lerato on this one, because just listening to what Nomfundo is saying, the whole question around quotas, for example, the whole question around affirmative action, that has been with us since the dawn of democracy. What are your views in terms of what Nomfundo is saying?
So two things. The first one is people are going through what we call diversity fatigue. The conversation goes and goes and goes, and we really don't convert that conversation into meaningful, tangible action. So every time, even a practitioner like myself steps into a space, people say, but we've been doing this. Then I always say, well, show me the numbers where the change has reflected. And they'll show me the, women development programs, etc. And you'd be a woman in corporate especially, and you'd be up and coming for 20 years, and you just never arrive. And I've always found that so strange. So we don't have healthy pipelines of women to put into these leadership positions. We use development programs as harbors to say this is what we're doing, and we celebrate that level. So the conversation around what can and should be legislated then always comes up, carrot and stick discussions. But it really is important to realize that you don't do anything related to transformation because you're a good person, because it's benevolent. Do it because it makes financial sense, which is why we're in business, right? So there's research. McKinsey publishes these reports every other year around kind of how companies are performing, right? The most diverse Fortune 500s are performing at around 21% better at the revenue line. So don't do it because, you're a good guy. Do it because it makes sense. When you have women sitting in key positions, there is change. And the harbor in that situation is that we put women on mancos, on excos, but we relegate them to admin and HR.
And this is true because looking from the outside in as well, Boipelo, when we look at women in high positions within corporate South Africa, we expect them to do certain things, as the financial director at Harmony Gold Mining Company, I'm thinking Boipelo is in charge of the money, the lots of money at Harmony. So how is Boipelo making sure that actually cascades down to women empowerment so that women can actually benefit from the fact that Boipelo is there in that position?
I think in my role, it's absolutely important and imperative that I feed down. So be that role model to up-and-coming women and advocate for gender diversity and inclusivity. At Harmony, I'm fortunate to work in a company where this is driven from board level. So it's not being in the mining industry, obviously the drive towards women in mining and the inclusivity of women within the mining sector, it's predominantly been a male-dominated industry. So there's a huge drive driven by the organizations like Minerals Council South Africa. We've got organizations like Women in Mining South Africa, which are pushing these things. So being an advocate for such change within the organization and leading by example, I'd say.
And I want to come to, corporates and funding of women's initiatives more broadly, and also given that we still on, cloud nine with sporting fever. I want to come to that in just a little while. But I want to ask Pinky, working with women who are perhaps most exploited, most vulnerable, what do you make of what you see when you listen to the conversation of women who hold high position in corporate companies and what they then do with the women who work for them when they go home? Let's bring that part of the conversation in.
Sometimes it's very sad because we'll be in the meeting with these powerful women, and they will be saying they are empowering women from the grassroots level. And I'll ask myself that which women are they talking about, because they are here, they left their domestic workers at home. I'm talking about the employers who will come and say we are empowering women. While they left the women, charity begins at home. If you want to empower the other woman, start with the one that's working for you. I believe that a powerful woman will empower other women to be not as powerful as she is, because I know that they want to keep domestic workers there. They don't want them to be at their level. That's why some employers, even if they can afford to pay a living wage, they will always pay domestic workers less so that they can beg for them. They are on their mercy. So, and it's very unfortunate that it's women who are doing that. Domestic workers, it's one sector that women are not recognized. We have to fight for everything. And I want to remind South Africa that domestic workers were there in 1956. This is the 67th year. We hear in the books of history that domestic workers were part of the 9 August and 1956 march. Many career women today are here where they are because of the path that was paved by the domestic workers. But it's very unfortunate because they don't want to empower them. Domestic workers are skillful. They are good cook. They can bake without going to school anywhere. But if some employers can empower domestic workers, maybe donate from the business, donate sewing machine, give domestic workers skill development programs so that they can live beyond domestic work. They should not keep them where they are. I want to tell you the honest truth. There are many domestic workers who are not enjoying Women's Day today, who are working as we speak. You'll find the employers being here on TV. The domestic worker is working so hard at her house on a public holiday. A female, a woman, left another woman not to celebrate the Women's Day. That's a true story of domestic workers in South Africa.
And that hits hard. I think we're now coming to, the reality of the situation, because if not for the domestic workers who are looking after our children, looking after our homes and keeping those home fires burning, none of us would be able to actually climb these corporate ladders that we do right now. So anyone want to come in to respond to what Pinky has said? Because I think that's quite powerful.
No, I definitely want to respond to that, because it's one thing to celebrate women when women are coming into the spaces that men have occupied, right? And I think that's where we've been. We don't celebrate women in the spaces that society has tasked them with and relegated them to without their will, right? So the care work in our society does not get valued. We don't think of care work as important. We don't think of community work as important. We don't even think about the raising of children as important, even though we say that it's such a good thing when you're a good mother, all of those things. And that's what has been reflected in that conversation, is that care work is undervalued in this country, but women bear the brunt of that work. And if we're going to celebrate women and women's empowerment, it mustn't just be about women coming into men's spaces. It must be about transforming those spaces so they're not men's spaces, number one, and valuing women's spaces equally, if not more, in terms of what they contribute to society broadly. If we don't do that, if we don't structurally change the way we think about what is valuable, it's not only, if we think about things like sport, if we're talking about sport, people ask, why should Banyana be paid as much as Bafana has played if they, don't have the skill set, this, or they have this, or this, or that. I'm like, I don't care that they don't compete with each other. That's not the reason why they're valuable. Women are valuable because they're valuable. They're valuable because they contribute. They're as valuable as men, even if they do different things. And that's the society we need to be building, rather than one where we try to make women only valuable if they compete with men.
Nolene, Tessa touches on the point of care work not being valued. And I think this is something that you would be all too familiar with.
Absolutely. I mean, if you take, and in the cancer space, I mean, more women in this country and in the rest of Africa are actually dying from breast cancer and cervical cancer. And that's the stats that are available. And if we, as the care worker or as the NGO in this space, if we don't help look after these women, who's going to look after the orphans that are left behind? And that mother or grandmother is the one that holds that family together. And there isn't sufficient help from the government, especially in our space, to do that. But what I do want to say, and our biggest funders, and I need to thank, is the mines in South Africa. They have recognized how important it is to take health services, regardless of what those health services are, to their people and their communities. I mean, next week we leave for nearly a month, traveling every day into another town, thanks to the mines in the Northern Cape. And it's not necessarily for their staff, it's for the communities where they draw their labour force from. So I really need to commend the mines. But getting to Pinky, we actually have a program for the employed women to pay it forward to ensure that their domestic worker gets screened. And that's actually working very well, you know, so they get the benefit, you know, as the employer of the domestic worker, but we have the privilege of ensuring that that woman is cared for. And I think what's also very important to note is that whilst we're a carer, we go even further. We navigate and we look after that individual who has been now diagnosed with a cancer right through the system. So we never leave any woman unattended.
So this is, of course, Morning Live. You're watching the Gender Series Volume 9, and it is Women's Day, and we're honing in on some of the very important issues. And I want to touch on some of the things that our panelists have mentioned. I want to talk about sport and funding, and I want to talk about you know, reproductive rights for women. And, you know, Lerato was talking, you know, about gender issues and sexuality. And we want to touch on all of these things and how they actually impact women on a daily basis. But right now it's 8 o'clock. Let's hand you back to Leanne in studio, and then we'll get back to this conversation. Let us know your thoughts at Morning Live SABC, or you can also send us a WhatsApp voice note.